Hello, my name is Musil, and today I will be walking you through my self-reflection assignment of my middle school field experience for EDUC 818. Included in this will be a link to my YouTube presentation, so then that way you can access this at any time. When looking at successfulness and were instructional activities successful, why or why not, or what made them successful or unsuccessful, I felt that most, if not all, activities in my experience were successful. Each activity taught me more about my students and what I needed to adapt to help my students succeed. Activities like the fluency games helped me to get to know my students and keep them engaged while determining their skill level. Community Circle, while not academically based, was very supportive in helping students respect one another's thoughts and opinions and have time to talk about their feelings on certain topics. I feel like the number one reason my activities were successful were that I made sure to plan in advance and have everything ready. The second reason was that I was flexible, and if students needed a little bit more time to make notes on their animal projects, then I gave them the time that they needed. Pre-teaching expectations. Looking at could any issues or problems observed have been avoided by pre-teaching expectations or developing clearer rules or expectations. This is one of the largest takeaways that I've taken in my beginning of my professional experience with teaching, and how important pre-teaching expectations are in holding students accountable. I'm a strong advocate in pre-teaching expectations. It helps students know what is expected and keeps them feeling supported. We reviewed expectations at every community circle and during instructional activities as well. If students weren't ready to show the expected behaviors, then they knew they could not participate or were given a second chance to try it again. Excitement. Were these students excited to be in class? Yes? No? Why or why not? I think the students were excited to be in class. They were practicing things at their level during the differentiation, which allowed them to feel confident at what they were doing. I think another reason they were excited is because a lot of learning was hands-on using technology. This allowed them to work at their own pace, and it allowed them to have more choice. The higher level students could go a little bit farther without having to slow down, and those who were struggling weren't trying to work on concepts beyond their understanding. Technology used in the right way can be such a helpful activity to use in our classroom. It helps students keep engaged, motivated, and gets them excited about learning. Engagement. I think when looking at were the students engaged or what evidence exists to support such claims, I think that for the most part students were engaged. It's a difficult time of year where it's Halloween, Thanksgiving, and getting into where they're beginning to get squirrely for Christmas time, but I think it worked out for the most part pretty well. Some students took more effort to keep engaged than others, but I think that is typical of most classrooms. This was evident through the communication between students during community circle and the collaboration during fluency and math practice. Student choice. Was student choice evident? If so, how? Student choice was not as evident in learning activities. I think this was because students were already divided by their abilities, and this was already differentiated. So they had something they were able to complete independently, so they didn't have as much choice that way. One area that this was heavily evident is when students could choose reading or math technology choices during reading or math rotations. During reading, they have a variety of different options such as book flicks, true flicks, science flicks, freedom flicks, which is like a history one, as well as some story online where people are reading to them. For math, we had a differentiated program called Dreambox, as well as extra math to help them practice their math fact fluency. Those different options allow them to try different things daily and to keep them motivated and looking forward to working with technology. Assessments. Did assessments truly reflect student learning or merely task completion or skill memorization? I felt that all assessments during my middle school experience truly reflected student learning. It included small informal assessment and quick exit tickets that allowed students to show what they know. It was not a drawn-out assessment that made students more nervous and led to difficulty performing the skills. Now, while I know that my observations did not show those lengthy assessments that take a little bit longer, I do know that working with my cooperating teacher, that they do have to perform those assessments, which I do not think necessarily have that skill memorization and show what students know. Students get so nervous when they're working on them, and they have difficulty showing the skills that they practiced for weeks or even up to a month, and it makes them stressed out and nervous. Specific strategies. Discuss specific strategies used to assist struggling students, gifted or accelerated students. One specific strategy that was used was scaffolding assignments so struggling students were exposed to the concept, but didn't have as many problems to work on as those who were on or above level. Another strategy was that students were grouped for additional intervention so that students received small group practice to fill in the gaps in their knowledge. Some other strategies are that if students are struggling readers, they have a book box that's right at their level, so they're able to be reading consistently books that they can read instead of trying to read the longer chapter books that they might not be ready for. The same thing goes for my above level learners that I saw in my experience. They might not only have to read a story, but they might also have to do a small project or a reflection activity with that to take that learning even a step further, because they are able to go through books or activities so much faster. Pride. Was an overall sense of pride evident in student learning, teaching, and how might this be observed? I think pride is a difficult thing to be observed, but I tried my best to really look in my experience and think of all the things that I'd seen. Pride was evident in the way students tried their personal best the first time and genuinely tried to solve it themselves before going to the teacher. It was also evident in students' work displayed around the classroom for others to see. Teacher pride is a little bit trickier as well, but I could see it when I looked closely. It was in the way she spoke about students when they were not around. There was also pride in the way she set up her classroom to fit students' needs. She adapted it and changed it based on her students, and she made sure that it helped them feel like home. PLCs. How did the teachers engage in professional development? Professional learning communities, PLCs. The middle school team meeting, also known as their PLCs, began with talking about celebrations for the week and how they were able to encourage and uplift each other and their students during the week. Things that they saw, those light bulb moments that help you get excited about teaching. Then it moved into, how are we being effective? How can we support one another? Are we implementing those instructional strategies that we have practiced? Are we following any improvement plans that we have in place? How are those things going, and do we need to adapt or modify those as needed? Then we would move into student learning data. Is the instruction driven by data? Is it adapted and specified based on what those students need, those gaps that we need to fill? And how is the data being used to change that instruction? And then lastly, are we on track for pacing for our instruction? Looking at our calendar that's coming up. What is coming up that we need to be aware of, and making sure that we are all uniform in how we are working together. Then moving into any future blueprints or frameworks or alignments if we need to modify. It ends with student behavior, talking about any attendance issues or behavior issues to address to help get ideas from other teachers about how we can be working with students and help them succeed. And lastly, how are we communicating with parents? Is it effective? Are their parents coming in frustrated about it? Are they happy with the amount of communication coming home? And do we need to change it, or is it working okay? That goes into communication. Describe school-home communication. How is this best achieved? Communication was held through a phone call, email, and newsletter format. Phone calls were used to touch base with parents about behavioral concerns seen in the classroom. Emails were used to celebrate students' successes seen in the classroom and to touch base if needed with parents. Also, a weekly newsletter was sent home to keep parents up to date with what was going on at school and events coming up. On the newsletter, there is always the teacher phone number and email with their office hours, so that way the parent could contact at any time that they needed. The first question that I picked was, what was my biggest takeaway from this middle school experience? I think my biggest takeaway was how many aspects of our school day can be differentiated. As a teacher fresh out of college, I had thought and heard about differentiation to meet the needs of my academic students. However, I had not thought about all the different ways that I could differentiate it, or might even see other people differentiating. I had not thought about alternative learning activities, common and individual objectives, alternative assessments outside of what's already been given to me by different teachers, content material, kinds of resources, and instructional delivery systems. This differentiation can make a difference, such a large difference in our students' lives. And coming out of college, it was very overwhelming to hear all of the different ways that I would have to adapt to fit my students' needs. But now that I've started to work with my curriculum or see other curriculums in place, it's slowly becoming easier and easier for me to find small and simple ways to help my students do the best they can be. My second question, what did you enjoy most about the middle school experience? What did you enjoy least? I think what I enjoyed most was my ability to work with another educator and see aspects of their job that are different than my own. I am always fascinated by how teachers run and structure their classrooms. This experience gave me a reason to take time to observe and see how another teacher gets it all done. There are so many things that I am able to take back to my own classroom and use to fit my own students' needs. What I enjoyed least connected with this. What I enjoyed least was that I was not able to spend as much time as I wanted in these classrooms. There's so many different areas of the day that I could have benefited from, and I just felt like sometimes it was crunch for time, and I wished I could have stayed longer and been able to see the succession of the projects they were working on or the scaffolding of how she set up a certain topic. And so it was hard to not have as much time as I wanted. The third question, what activity from this course helped you to grow most as an educator? I think the activity that helped me grow the most from this course were the reflective journals. While they were hard to slow down, I think that with such a fast-paced lifestyle, it can be difficult to remember a lot of activities we participated in during this course. The reflection journal helped me put a pause button on what I was working on and truly remember all of the work that my collaborating teacher and I put into helping me grow. Standard 1 believes that every young adolescent has the capacity to learn, grow, and develop into a knowledgeable, reflective, caring, ethical, and contributing citizen. I believe this first standard went into how I pushed Community Circle and SEL, or SEB, sometimes known as, in the classroom and in the observations that my teacher saw. Students need that time to be able to communicate and to think on other people's thoughts and ideas to be able to succeed someday as a future citizen. They need to understand that we have different opinions and views, and that's okay, and how to communicate those and be okay with those. The second standard believes that every young adolescent must have access to the very best programs and practices a school can offer. This went into all the effective practices in the middle school environment that I studied, all the different ways that curriculum and all of our resources can go into building the best program that a school can give to its students. We can have a reading curriculum and a math curriculum, but we need to scaffold and support and add additional resources to fill in those gaps and to fill in those things that our students need. If we simply read off of a day-to-day curriculum, then our students are going to soon become bored with what we're doing, and it might be missing a lot of what they need. Every child is different, and we need to adapt to fill those needs and believe that they deserve the right to those things. Standard 3 believes that every young adolescent must be engaged in learning that is relevant, challenging, integrative, and exploratory. This standard is so closely tied into the connection that for our students in this day and age to succeed, they have to be able to work with technology, and they have to be able to problem solve and figure out the different ways and programs things work. If they're not able to handle that technology, jobs all over the world are using that, and they're not going to be able to be successful. The way that we do that in our classrooms today is by giving those choices during reading and math groups, by allowing students to be working with Google Docs, Google Slides, PowerPoint, Word documents, and having that exploratory learning time for them to practice. If they don't have the time to practice now, when there's someone here able to help them and support them, it's going to be much harder later when they're trying to do it all alone.